meeting of the Katuitt Water Department Water Commissioners to order, April 21st, 5:45 p.m. And we will start with to see if there's any public comment. Get going. Anybody? Oh, nice. Okay. Very good. Then
Paul, do you want to, I'm sorry.
Did I have a hand up?
Mr. Sebra sent me some public comment. Mr. Sebra, do you want to read it or want me to read it in now, or would you rather wait till the end of the meeting or during the irrigation discussion?
Whatever you think is appropriate. I'm happy to, to do whatever is,
Okay.
what the normal.
Well, we will take comments on each item. So if you'd like to do it relative to, if it's on the irrigation policy, we're going to have a presentation tonight from our consultant. In fact, here's Tom Camberry now. So it's up to you, Mr. Sebra, but perhaps it would make more sense to hear the presentation and then comment. But again, it's up to you.
Oh, that's fine. I'm happy to.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Any other public comment then? Wonderful. All right, well, let's start off with I think I'm gonna hold off on the meeting minutes, just given the time, and move right to the water quality report and the superintendent's report from the superintendent, Chris.
All right, all samples came back absent of bacteria this month. So we're doing well there. We did do some extra testing this month. We did some sodium. You guys had me do a few of the sodiums at the tanks and at the old tank site. They all were above 20. So that's from I believe last month. And we did finally get the results. It was like 21, 23, and I can't remember what the other was at this point. I ended up taking them all in one day. This is the first month that we've been breaking them up. So next month we'll have a little more and can kind of compare them to what was running that day and what wasn't and everything else. So I'll have a little more on that next month. I can jump right into the report here unless you have anything on.
No, go ahead.
All right, report read on April 21st, 2021. In March of 2020, we pumped 7,122,000 gallons of water. In March of 2021, we pumped 6,578,000 gallons of water for 544,000 gallons less than last year, which is the first time that's happened in quite a while, and looking good, yeah. I'm not sure what to bring it to. Could be the fact that we had a little more rain this year than last year. I'm not positive. It could just be that, all our efforts are taking effect.
Interesting.
It's also probably something to do with the amount of people in the village last March compared to this March.
Correct.
Still a busy place, but.
Yeah, a lot of people stuck around last year, quite a bit. Yeah. All right. We did get 2 new services in town, one over on Elm Street and one on Vineyard Road. So added a couple more new ones to the account list. We didn't have any replacement services or any leaks. We still are doing our flushing, as you heard out there. Everything's going well. We did have to take a few days off last week between sampling and weather related stuff, but we're still going at it and pumping going right along on that. Like I said earlier, JR has been running that and been doing a great job.
Hey, Chris.
Yes.
I don't know, you probably haven't had a chance to research it yet, but I did send around a thing about the filters for PFAS that Braintree was using successfully.
Yes.
And I'm stunned that it could be such a simple fix. Have you researched that anymore?
I just got that this morning. I had a super busy last few days with everything going on and having the short week, but I did get that. I can give you my thoughts on that. I am probably 92% sure that Braintree already has a filtration system in effect right now, a water treatment system. So they might have just changed the filters that they had on there now to a different type, which will actually remove PFAS at the same time, which back when we had our different prices for 2 different treatment systems, one said you could put in the more expensive filters that just in case you had any PFAS, it would help out. So that's my guess, that they have a filtration system right now and they just changed the filters on it. But I can I'll try reaching out to that and find out from somebody who might, one of the engineers that might work for them over there.
So it's not just putting a filter between our pumps and the tanks. It's
No, if I put a filter in, then I'd have to treat everything beforehand, have to oxidize stuff and everything else to bring stuff out. So it's not something simple like just a pressure filter.
that sounds logical, Chris. Thanks.
Yep. All right. Believe it or not, Massachusetts, or at least our section of Massachusetts, is at 11 mile drought right now. Southeast section's in a level 2. Levels did not increase that much over the winter. We didn't have hardly any snow at all. We haven't had a lot of rain. Since they put it out, I think it's rained twice, but we didn't have any rain really before that too much that I can remember. It really, with the new water management permit, if we do get it, we'd already be into watering 1 day a week right now between the hours of 9 and 5, before 5 o'clock in the morning and 9 o'clock at night after. So there's some stuff that's what everything's triggering off of with the new Water Management Acts. Right now, we currently work off of one that is a level of a well in, I believe it is in Bourne. It might be Brewster. Not positive. But that has to be below a certain level for a certain time before we have to put any kind of restrictions out or anything like that. The other thing, the last thing I have on here is we did advertise. I did some interviews, and I've actually hired a boy by the name of a man, I guess I should say, not a boy, sorry, by the name of Jonathan Maduris. He starts on Monday. So we shouldn't be as short-handed. There'll be a lot of training going on involved. He's was in the waterworks construction end of it. He has done the work before, had qualifications. We did about 5 interviews, and he was the most qualified out of the 5 that we did. So he starts Monday, and hopefully all his paperwork will get done, and we'll keep on going from there. We got someone that'll stick around.
Chris, thanks for mentioning that. That was going to be my question. How's the staffing going? So
Yes.
that sounds like a great step in the right
Yeah,
direction.
we went in gung ho and tried to get everything going. We did end up getting, I'd probably say 15 to 20 applications. A lot of them were out of the district, out of beyond our regulations and everything else. So limitations. So
Excellent.
that basically is a quick report for me.
Any
Very nice.
questions for Chris on the superintendent's report?
Is Jonathan a local guy?
Yes, he's from Centerville, Hyannis line.
I recognize the name.
He used to work for Bortolotti Construction, actually, and has done work for us in the past on the crew.
One of your students, Tom?
No, no, I don't think so. No,
Otherwise, we have to check his report card, right?
right? Yeah, he did fine. No, I didn't.
Okay. Any other questions for Chris? Chris, thanks for that update. I appreciate it. Let's move on to the irrigation policy. And for those who are joining us tonight, Tom Cambereri is back. He's our consultant, been working with us for several months under the name of Sole Source Consulting. He's done some groundwater modeling. We heard a draft report last month, and he's now finalized that report. And just briefly, this really originated from a workshop we held quite a while ago on the irrigation policy. We got some good input, and people suggested, why don't you do a little more study to find out what these impacts actually are? So we listened to people and we did it, and we've hired, and Tom's done a great job. So with that, I think Tom has a presentation for us. We'll turn it over to you, Tom. Thanks for being here again tonight.
You're welcome. Nice to join you again. And let's see if I get my PowerPoint going here. There I am. Okay. You can see my screen. Is that
Looks good.
good, or should I don't know if I can go more full screen or not, but I think I've done it this way before. Yes, so our project report is been finalized with input from commissioners and staff. Thank you for the review and great comments. And we began kind of with the contract at the turn of the year, and we've had a couple of progress reports, and as you said, Scott. And so I'll just briefly go over some of the highlights of the report or findings. So this is started the whole issue off. I think for the water commissioners is the change of conditions in the Little River, and this two photographs shows March 2020 on the left over here with water flowing under Sampson's Mill Road, and this is the dry riverbed in March of this year, just standing on Sampson's Mill Road looking south. So two quite different conditions. As Chris has indicated, looking at the water level situation over a period of time, this is this index well that he mentioned. And so, here we are here. This is actually, the date of the level from yesterday. So we're down in this sector of the area of the historic data from the late 70s, the ups and downs, very high water tables, very low water tables, and we had some fairly good water table conditions of the turn of the year last year in March and April, and so those are the conditions. And if you see, it's about if we look at the depths of the groundwater, there's probably about 3 foot difference of groundwater between this condition and that condition in the index well that's measured over at the high school. As we get into the modeling, we had to look at how much does the Katuitt Water District pump, and in relation to the conditions, and so how has it changed over a period of time. And so this is a graph of the total pumpage that occurs. And on the average, it's 1 million gallons per year, but it's about a million gallons a day. It's about 0.6 million gallons a day on the average. And the pumping has increased over this period about 56%. The number of accounts have increased 34%. And the average water use by accounts increased about 16%. I think the average is about 264 gallons of water per account presently in the last 10 years. So a number of things happening due to the number of accounts and increased water demand, increasing the water demand pumping at from the district. So we've had to look at the average pumping from each of the different wells. So these are the 5 wells from the district, and you'll see well 5 is the leader in pumping, and it's always the most. It pumps at about 30% of the water per year is pumped from well 5. 20% is from stations 2, 4, and 1 that are in the Sampson's Mill area next to Little River, and station 3 is about 10%. And you can see the significant changes between a low of water that's pumped in the off season. It's about half of the average, 0.03, and in the summer it goes up to where's my note here? 1.7 million gallons a day. So the average is 0.6, 1.7, and 0.3. Vast different conditions. So getting on to setting the groundwork for what is going on at the district, we need to look at the resource and start the modeling. Just, again, this is the USGS groundwater model here with 400 square foot grids. We took a close look at the area here. Here's the Little River here. We've discretized this down to 1/16 of the size per grid. So each grid is 100 feet, and felt that this was give us the most more specific data on how groundwater, surface water interactions are working in this area. So we do a lot of modeling. We looked at pump tests and different aquifer parameters, and we got down to a series of results here that are presented. These two maps, one with a topographic background, one with a land use background. And what you see here is the Little River. So let's concentrate on the Little River here first, okay? These are the colors reflect the flow of groundwater into the river. And here's the scale over here. So red side is greater amounts of flow, and these are in cubic feet per day into the river. And up in the upper parts, you're getting very low amounts, starting at 400 when it shows up in the model. We're not seeing any flow into the model river cells pretty much north of 28. And so it just begins down in here, and then the water flows to the river, and it gathers flow as it goes down gradient to each specific node. What else do we see? We see, and then this is just a mirror of the drainage to the river. So we see groundwater table contours. Okay, these are in 2-foot contours with actually they're half-foot contours. These bolded ones are 2-foot increments. And then we also see what are called particle paths. And so the groundwater model simulates groundwater flow, and when we're satisfied that it does a good job with that and meeting the different parameters, we call it the calibration approach method. And then we can use the model in different ways. And one of the ways is to seed it with particles, and the groundwater model moves those particles according to groundwater flow. And you can do reverse particle tracks and forward. So what we did is we seeded the wells to show you basically the capture areas of groundwater to the wells. And then also we seeded the river as well. So these groundwater flow paths flow perpendicular to groundwater flow. Every good hydrologist knows when you look at a water table map, groundwater flows perpendicular. So here it is to well 4, and I forget if this is 1 and 2 or 1 and 2, but then this is well 3 down in here.
Hey, Tom, can I jump in here? These are great maps. Could you go to presenter view? Because my eyes are too old to see the detail here, and they're really great maps. So would you mind thank you.
Is that better? Good. Yeah, last time I did this, we had some issue with it. So.
Oh yeah.
Actually,
it looks
great.
Like it's still not.
Thanks for the suggestion. I did blow this one up later on if you wanted to talk about this.
Okay, good. Maybe we can come back to it. Thanks.
So some of the key areas here is what's the flow to Sampson's Mill Road that comes in here? What's the flow over at the Putnam Ave, cumulative flow? And what's the flow at the Old Post Road? So these are kind of our markers when I looked at flow and to compare the different situations. So covering that, this is the 0.6 million gallons a day. That's your average annual amount that Chris pumps to deliver water through the year. So now let's look at the off season. And the off season is half as much. It's 0.3 over that period of time, over the 6 months, shoulder months, not the shoulder months, but the winter months, and the flow, because the pumping is less, you can see actually there's more flow going into the river by the colors. You actually see a little bit of an extension up over 28 here and the colors change a little bit. So I'm going to just move back to average. So here's average, and you're seeing, the darker blues are less flow in this area to, oops, where did I go? To less of the blue low flows. So you're getting more flow into the river. And I've got the statistics to show you that later on. And but basically that's the big changes is more flow to the river under the off season, smaller capture areas, and the capture to the river itself doesn't really change too much. But one of the big points is that under all these conditions is that you see the wells get its water from up gradient areas. It's not a condition where the wells are pumping and grabbing water out of the river. What is happening, and we could look at the contours and compare them, is that was the wells pump more, there is a lowering of the water table that reduces the amount of water that can flow into the river. So now I'm going to show you the summer conditions. So this is the 0.8 million gallons a day, or actually over that, 0.88 or something. This is, you can see the zones are much higher here. And also that the flow in the river, that there is more transgression, there's less of the dark blue in these areas, so there's less flow. Just looking at the colors in these diagrams. So the change again is even under the summer conditions pumping, although the capture area increases, it doesn't get it from the river, but what it does is it increases the flow even more. It increases, it decreases the groundwater table elevation, so there's less water going into the river. And that's what this model is showing and telling us. I also did some drawdown analysis, and this is from, if we go back and I could use the model, you can do amazing things with the model. One of the things I did was say, well, let's say there was no pumping at all from the well field. What would the conditions be like? And then I could compare what the groundwater conditions were like before Katuitt ever put in any wells to the conditions now. And this is under average pumping. So under average pumping, this is a drawdown of 0.4 feet. Let's right in this area here. So here's the river, and so 0.4 feet of this is less than a half a foot, maybe what is that, 5 some odd inches of drawdown under this condition. And under summer condition, the drawdown is approaching 0.9 feet of drawdown near the river. So this is during this period, summer period with more pumping. The drawdowns are more severe, and the drawdown at the river is 0.9. So it's over 0.4 to about 0.9 here.
Hey, Tom, question here, if I may.
Yeah.
Just to interpret this, the 0.4 feet at the stream under average pumping, that's about, you said 5 inches. Now,
Yep.
I've been out there in that area, and Tom, you and I went out there last summer, I think.
Yeah.
My recollection is the depth of water was probably 4 or 5 or 6 inches. So just to clarify this, isn't it true that if the water was 5 inches deep and then we started pumping under average conditions, wouldn't that make the stream go dry in this case? We have a 5-inch drawdown. Is that what you're saying? If it was 5 inches to begin with?
Yeah. So right now versus a non-pumping condition. So that really doesn't exist now. So the condition that that exists now is I would say that you'd have to look at the average condition under here and say this is the water table condition for the the average conditions over the entire year. And so how does the water level in the river compare to these average levels? And what the model is telling us, for this average conditions, we're getting flow into all the cells up to 28. And so, like I said, we went out there this winter, even March and April, and we don't really see any flow in this area here. So what's happened is we have a more exceptional condition that we're not simulating here, which is let's say the severe the kind of drought type conditions that we have.
Okay, thanks.
This is a curve. I've talked a lot about the flow into the river cells. So if we look at the river from Lovell's Pond up this way down to Old Post Road here, this orange line tells us how much water is going into each segment of the river. And so nothing up to 28, and then you get down to the power line, and there's flows of about 1,200 to 1,600 going in, and this area is where the river is actually wide, made up of abandoned cranberry bog and tributaries, and the model cells are specific to where they are, whether they're internal and getting more flow or external. And so it's basically a fluctuating area because of the width of the river is several hundred feet versus one node, and that we would get here. And so the flows increase dramatically when you get down to Captain Samadras Road, and then starts to kind of level off till you get to Old Post Road. And here's the cumulative flow that's coming out of this of the river. CFS for the model is about 160,000 cubic feet per day. I think it's about like 0.4 CFS. So I've shown you pictorially what's happened in the model and that. And so you could also use the model to look at the different flows under the different situations. And so up here is just the block shows the little river flows in cubic feet per day. And then for other engineers and folks, this is in cubic feet per second. And then the percent. And so what it shows is non-pumping conditions, off-season, average, and summer. So for the non-pumping condition, you're seeing a lot more flow. Well, let's look at the CFS here. So you're looking at the highest amount of flow in the entire river, and off-season is a little bit less. Average is less, and then in the summer there's even the least amount. And so how do those percentages add up or subtract? Well, from the off season to non-pumping season, there's a decrease of 3%. And for the average condition, there's a decrease of 7%. And in the summer condition, there's a decrease of flow of 12%. So that's for the entire river length. And I'll just jump over to here to look at the more sensitive area of the river from 28 to Sampson's Mill Road. And there we see that the changes from off-season to non-pumping is 12, just about 11%. And in summer, there's a 32% change in the amount of flow to the river. So that's fairly significant for for change of flow that is reported by the model. So overall, the river decreases from this non-pumping condition. And then again, I've talked about, in response to your question, Scott, is like, well, what is the background? What do we use as a threshold or a benchmark for what we're talking about? And so if we say, well, let's, because this is all very, I don't know, educational to this point, but if we say at the average rate and then look at the difference between the average and the summer rate, well, there's a 5% decrease overall from average to the summer, and over a 15% decrease from the average to the summer in this more sensitive area to Sampson's Mill Road. And to put this more on paper, because or not would compare it to actual data that we have, we can look at the historical record and what's going on now at the indexed well. So again, this is the measurement for just yesterday, and the depth to water is 25.26. So it's actually come up a little bit. And what you see here is this is the average condition here that should exist, if things were average. But right now, this green bar says this is like the normal range from a high normal to a low normal, and then we get into more severe differences. This is a 25 percentile, and here's like a 90th percentile. So these are the more extreme ends of the data. And so we compare this, where we are in April today, to where we were a year ago. And this, we don't quite grab April, but it's, this would be kind of off the map here. So there is this difference of, about, almost 3 feet or 2.5, 3 feet change from where we are, and in compared to the average condition. So what we, so it's, and this also is the index well that Chris was talking about, and then the permit says at 25.33 feet to water, that begins a period of time where you would say, okay, now we're getting into a drought condition, and this is going to initiate a more stringent water conservation program. This I had looked at this in early April, and the depth to water was like 25.4, which was over the 25.33. But now we've gotten some more rain and we've come up. And the condition for that threshold is that it needs to be below that threshold for 60 days. So if we count that, I think we had 11 days that were below that earlier in April, and now it's outside that threshold again. So what this kind of gets at is I really didn't have any field data for the model to evaluate where things are relative to the pumps and the groundwater levels. We were very fortunate to have the best regional model put together by the USGS just last year. So it was a fully calibrated model. I have a great degree of confidence in what it's telling us relative in relative numbers. But what we should be looking at to ground this effort is some field efforts to say, okay, what is the water level right now beneath the bed in certain locations beneath the Little River. And so we had a number of recommendations for collecting field data, and actually was talking to Commissioner Horsley about potentially going out and doing just 1 or 2 of these things as the commissioners consider more formally how to move with these recommendations. So that's the report. That's the findings that I had, and basically that the conditions that we see, the water level conditions, really set the stage for what we see in the Little River, and the fluctuations are more, are more significant, have more significant impact than the wells, but the wells can exacerbate the situations where there is a transition from a low level to a more drought condition, because the pumping would accentuate or exacerbate the groundwater decrease over that period. So I'll take any questions.
Thank you, Tom. That was great. And commissioners, questions?
I mean, I had a chance to read the full report, and I think it's very comprehensive. I would just say there's an old saying that when you manage for one thing, you manage against another. And I don't think it's our job to be worrying about the outlet pipe in Lovell's Pond. I'm persuaded, having seen it as recently as yesterday, that unclogging that pipe is going to do nothing for Little River, and it's going to be artificially lowering the water level of Lovell's Pond. So that's just my feeling. That strictly was used as an irrigation pond for the cranberry bogs when they were in production. That's no longer the case. So I don't think we should be worrying about the upstream part of Little River. I think we should be worrying about the sections below Route 28.
Commissioner Hoppenstad, any questions or comments?
Yeah, I'd like to just kind of tag on to that a little bit. It's interesting that section of the river does not receive groundwater flow. So it must be graded to the level above the water table, right? As an engineered stream, is that what you think is going on there, Tom? Or
Yeah, I think so, and I think, again, we didn't have true, we used the elevation data from the USGS model and the drains conductance levels also. There was a measurement that was made in this area when the water levels were higher, and so what we didn't look at was the, let's say, this is the average condition, but there was a measurement here, and so I'm not sure what was going on last March, whether certainly the water levels were higher, and it may be that this area here was able to receive flow, more flow than what the model is showing us today. And so that's where it gets into, well, what are the actual elevations up in here at 28 at the Sampson's Mill, Putnam Ave, and Old Post. And I will tell you, in advance of trying to evaluate this, I was able to talk to the town surveyor, and so we now have some benchmarks that have been laid out at 28 Sampson's Mill, Putnam Ave, and this area, I think Mark has got a good point here, is that this is kind of a manipulated system, and the even talking to Chris about his recollection of there being a pump actually that would pump the water from the sump that came from the pond into the river. So it's a different condition that we have here today, and than what was measured in 2019, which I think was even wetter than the period that we have here.
Okay, Tom, thank you. We do have several members of the public here, and we're thrilled to have you. Thank you for coming. So I would like to, at this point, open it up. Stanley, you have your hand up. I know Mr. Seaver wants to speak as well, but Stanley, go ahead. We'll start with you.
Yeah, question from a layperson, more than a layperson. Last year, if I remember correctly, we had quite a deficit in rain. I think during the end of the summer, we were down in the low double digits in rain. Towards the end of the year, getting towards November, December, maybe we were down only in the high single digits. How much effect does that have on the flow of Little River? Can you, well, obviously it has an effect. Can you account for that? For the dryness of the river?
Yeah, I think it's I think it's clear that the fluctuations that we have seen have led to the observations of a dry riverbed at this point. We did have a fairly significant decrease in water levels that occurred in this drought condition that we're just kind of rebounding from right now. I did see some water back in February that was crossing the power line area. It was just a trickle, but there was a little bit of flow there. And I don't know whether that was part of the snow melting there, but it was so the background levels of the fluctuation of the water table as it goes up and down during the year, and how that's changed from very wet periods to very dry drought periods, has a significant effect on the water in the amount of water in the river.
Thank you.
Mr. Seaver, you've been very patient. Let me go to you next. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Tom, for your analysis. As someone who made their living as a consultant, I appreciate the ins and outs of your report. But in regards to your presentation, I was sort of looking for bullet points with recommendations, and maybe that's upcoming. But I wanted to make 2 points in terms of, number one, in terms of enforcement. In our own neighborhood, we just witnessed this week, and I drove by this morning, a new lawn irrigation system that was connected up a couple days ago and blasting away all over the street this morning. I'm very sensitive to these groundwater issues because a lot of the biology of the Cape depends on it. In terms of, if there's no herring, there's no stripers, there's no stripers, there's no tourists. So I wanted to urge you folks to be, when you consider what you're going to do over the summer, to be aggressive in terms of enforcement. And having been in various communities in the Commonwealth through watering bans, to try and have a residential home with a putting green lawn on the Cape is basically a crime against nature. It's just, this area is just not suited for it. So I would urge the commission, when they take this up, to have a complete ban on any type of sprinkler systems, whether it's in-ground or portable, and rely on hand watering for lawns only in non-commercial areas. We have to make concessions, I guess, to the golf course. But if you're wondering about feedback from the residents, I would encourage you to be more aggressive rather than less aggressive. And that's, that's it, I guess.
Well, Mr. Seaver, let me thank you for your comment and encourage you to hang around a little bit, because once we finish up with Tom's report and questions, we are going to discuss where we go from here in terms of potential irrigation policies. So if you can hang in with us, there may be some further discussion. But let me ask
Okay.
Ms. King, if you'd like to comment. You're here. We appreciate your being here. Let me recognize you. And not putting you on the spot. You don't have to say anything or ask any questions. I think you're muted. I think you're muted. We can't hear you. Can you hear? I can't hear.
No.
No, we cannot hear you. You're muted. Hmm. We can't hear you. We can't hear you. You're muted. She can't hear me either, I guess, huh?
She's unmuted, but for some reason we can't hear
Oh.
her. Yeah,
Maybe Jen, could you send her a chat or something?
I will, yep.
Ms. King, I don't know if you can hear us, but we cannot hear you. And
Maybe sign back in.
Yeah, sign back in. Make a suggestion to her, Jen, please.
Try waving at her.
I think it should reset her audio.
She's frozen. She's frozen now, so hopefully she'll come back in. But let me, while we're doing that, Jen, let me go back and again, Mr. Sebra or Stanley, any further questions, comments? Because we really appreciate you being here. And let me open it up to anybody at this point. Oh, wait a minute. Is she back here? No. Other questions, comments?
Scott, I
Yes.
think it's important, just the bottom line, this whole thing, and I defer to my betters, but to me, the bottom line is that if we're worried about the water levels in Little River, we can only control the pumping rates in the wells that we have authority over. We can't control the drought conditions. But if drought conditions are a primary driver of reduced water levels in the river, we can only make that worse by increasing the pumping. So it won't rebound as fast if we have increased pumping. And so I think that that's really the takeaway for me from the great modeling work, which I'm not technically qualified to examine and analyze, but that's what I get out of this. Is that a fair assessment?
Let me just jump in, Tom, and I'll let you reply, but you stole my thunder. I was going to wait till everybody else commented and questioned, but let me add a question to that, Tom, and then you can respond. My takeaway is a little more technical, and that is what I was trying to get at earlier. You're showing a 0.4 foot drawdown in the river at Sampson's Mill Road under average pumping and a 0.9 foot, which is a foot of drawdown in a river that we typically see 3 or 6 inches of water in, which in my mind is saying it's going to go dry when you have that kind of drawdown. And then the other number that I kind of focus on is your 32% at Sampson's Mill Road. That's a 1/3 reduction in flow, which I think ecologically is pretty significant. So again, those are rhetorical questions I'd add to Commissioner Robinson, but please, if you could respond to both of us, that would be great. What's the bottom line here?
Yeah, you're correct. It's there is these conditions, these drought conditions that can even be a lot more extreme than we're seeing now. You know, over the course of my career, I've seen ponds dry up, actual ponds, and not just the river flows decreasing, and resulting in some pretty dire conditions for some endangered plant species. But the change that is occurred by pumping, you're right. If you look at the change, it's from 0.4 to 0.9. Well, then there's like five inches of potential drawdown in the summer that is happening. And now under a dry bed situation, under drought situation, the difference of 5 feet won't make a difference. But during those transitional periods of time, when it's morphing from high springtime into summer, and that's when you're having the most pumping during that condition, and that's kind of the concern, is that it can exacerbate that situation by 5 some odd inches of summer pumping during that period when the water table is starting to transition and go to a lower level and through the fall. Of course, once you get into the fall, your pumping is backs off by over half. So then it's less of a situation, unless we're in a drought situation again, like we're actually seeing that now, but over this winter where there was very little flow.
I mean, my sense is the pumping condition comes at a time when the when the ecosystem is at its most sensitive stage in the summer months, when it's most productive. So that's one of the reasons why this is a big problem. Ms. King, we see you have returned. Oh, is she still here? Or did we lose her again? Uh-oh.
Gone again.
Maybe it's me speaking to her that's causing the problem. I'll let one of you.
I asked her also if she wanted to send me a chat. I could read her
Oh,
comments.
okay. That's a
but-
great idea. There's something in the chat now. That's, oh, I see. Yeah, okay. Any other comments or questions for Tom? Tom, this is great work. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. And, I did, in response to Paul, we did have, a whole series of, recommendations. We basically are looking at trying to fine tune and set up a, monitoring observation type program of the river and the wells, and to fine tune that information, and maybe establish that we have the index well that's referenced in the Water Management Act permit, over at the high school, but having measurements at the river and in between, and maybe one of the ponds or so, can provide more assurance about the conditions of the river and its fluctuations related to not only the natural precipitation cycles, but pumping.
Thanks, Tom. And I've asked Tom to give us, and he didn't go through all of his recommendations. They are in the report. I think we do want to consider doing some summer work since we have the pumping season coming up to document some of this. So Tom and I talked about that today, and perhaps we can talk about that the next meeting, some work going forward, which I don't think it'll be a lot of work, but I think it'll help confirm by actual measurements during the peak summer season. So we can talk more about that, Tom, and maybe put something on the agenda for next month. But I guess what I'd like to do at this point, given the agenda and the time, is move on to segue this discussion into what do we do about this, to Commissioner Robinson's question. And as I think most people here know, we've had a irrigation moratorium in place. We've been studying this. We had the workshop. We did a lot of listening. We had some great input. I think one of the big points was, let's do more study and make sure this is what we think is going on. My sense is Tom's work is confirming what we thought, that there are impacts here. So again, back to Commissioner Robinson's point, what do we do about it? I will just mention that I have drafted two things, neither of which we need to act on tonight. But one is an update of the proposed irrigation regulations. And what I'd like to do is just summarize some of the changes that I'm thinking about in about 3 minutes. I've also drafted an summer intern scope of work, if you will, job description. And I'd like to just briefly explain that, because these are my two recommendations, and I'd like to, I guess, put them out there. We can have some discussion. We don't need to act on either one of them tonight. But first of all, in the regulation, what I'm suggesting in the most recent draft would be to, as we've already decided during the moratorium, not allow any new hookups in terms of automatic in-ground systems. And secondly, to require that anybody that wants to stay on the system with an in-ground system must register with the water department so we know where they are. They would have to install their own water meter so we can track that at their expense. And then they'd have to implement a number of water conservation measures, including so-called smart technology, which would minimize the irrigation water to some extent. And then there's in the draft regulation, there's also a clause about encouraging people to consider putting in their own private well and getting off the public system for irrigation. And I know that a number of people have done this. Chris and I talk about this, and we keep seeing this happen. So the message is getting out there. People are doing it. But I think, and then the last provision is to, by putting in the additional water meters, would be to consider a premium rate, higher cost rate, if you will, to using the water for irrigation. And with the meter, we'd be able to differentiate that. So those are the components that are in the updated regulation. I'll just briefly outline the summer internship, which goes along with that, the proposed internship. And just we do have a budget item which was approved to fund this, I might add. But the idea of the internship would essentially do an inventory to find out what is out there today in terms of irrigation systems, to integrate that into a GIS, Geographic Information System, and then to develop a public outreach program. Oh, okay, thank you, Jen.
Mhm.
A public outreach program because I know we're going to have questions, and we want to be transparent and we want to be helpful. So to design and develop a outreach program to talk to people and explain why we're doing this and what their options are. I think there are some cost-effective options for people to get off the public drinking water system and utilize private wells. We also want to promote, as one of the speakers tonight indicated, the possibility of rethinking landscaping a little bit. There's a great book out called Ecological Landscaping by one of our Cape Cod residents over in Osterville, Jack Ahern. And so there's a lot of education that I think we can do on people reconsidering, as one of the speakers tonight mentioned, the putting green lawn and maybe a little bit more naturalized landscape as an option. If they want to have more of a lawn, they could certainly do it with a private well as an option. So that's essentially the proposed regulation and the internship. That's a really quick overview. I think what we'll do, Jen, is post these on the water department website so that people can go and read them. And I'd like to get them on the agenda for next month for potential edits and action. But let me just start by seeing if there are questions and comments on what I've outlined verbally and admittedly briefly. But if people have thoughts on that, I'd love to hear them at this point.
So Scott,
Go ahead.
sorry, I was just going to ask, I had intended to post Tom's study, assuming that's the final draft and that I have the latest version. You also want me to post the
Yes.
proposed irrigation policy and the job posting?
I think so. I'll ask the other commissioners their thoughts on that, but I'll just, maybe before we make that decision, certainly we should post Tom's report, no doubt about that. And I'd like to get some input from the commissioners and the public on where we go from here. I've put out a couple of suggested items, one being the regulation for consideration, and the second being the internship to gather data and develop an outreach program. So thoughts and comments on either one of those?
I really like the changes that you've made to the draft irrigation policy. It's kind of come about organically, as we've talked about, requiring people to register their systems and obtaining separate meters for their irrigation systems, so that if they want to spend the money, they can. And I think that's fair to the irrigators. I like that a lot. I'm wondering also, and this is just something for Chris to think about, is if we install some monitoring points along the stream so that we can see levels during the summer pumping season and see how they're fluctuating in response to that increased pumping. Is there a way we could also switch our pumping rates away from Station 4, 1 and 2, but certainly Station 4, and pick up the excess with Station 3 and 5?
I don't believe we have enough water there to do it. I think we'll be putting a little too much on those two. We can certainly try to get them a little lower, like just instead of pumping, the 3 stations, maybe only pump 1 or 2 out of there at a time. And we've been trying to do that a little now, especially 4. It's a little closer, and it's actually a little higher in manganese and iron than all. So we've tried to keep that down a little bit anyways, through communication, just the guys trying to rotate things. We have to run our stations during the summer. Sometimes all 5 stations are on. It goes by levels of our tank to be able to keep that level, and sometimes we just can't keep up with it. It's tough to do, but we have the way to put lead lag. We can put each one so a certain level come on at a certain time, or excuse me, a certain level puts a different station on.
Right.
So that's the way we've always run there, without changing, I guess, BFDs, something to that effect in there, so that we were filling more at night only and stuff like that. That would have to be, we'd have to change our system, a way of running a little bit. It is possible, but it would take some training and some changing of equipment.
Just something to put in our hat to think about, I think, as particularly if we do end up installing some more monitoring sites along the river, so that we can game that system a little bit.
And just as I just wanted to say, and it's just to reiterate what Tom had mentioned earlier, that level of, he called it the schoolhouse well that we have to go off of, those are right in line with what we have right now. He's talking 2 to 3 feet difference. Our levels in our own wells right now are 2 to 3 foot difference than they were at this time last year.
Yeah.
So this drought still has not come back at all.
Yeah. Mr. Seaver, you had another question or comment?
Yeah, I guess I had a question first. Are you more concerned about the pumping capacity of the wells in terms of volume per unit of time? Or are you concerned about the net drawdown of the aquifer?
Well, I'll respond first. I actually have 3 concerns. The 2 that you mentioned, the drawdown on the stream and the wetlands, which frankly I view as almost a violation of the Wetlands Protection Act in Massachusetts. Secondly, Chris, as he's just indicated, is bumping up against the max on our system. We're maxing it out. And I think any sustainable system that's not a good situation to be in. And then the third impact is really water quality. I think there's, we don't have time to get into it tonight, but the simple way to put this is the more you pump a well, the more pollutant sources you can draw into it, including iron and manganese sources, which is one of the issues we've been dealing with, and as well as other sources. So I think those are the 3 concerns that I have,
Okay.
and I think they're shared.
Yep. I was curious because if you're concerned about the net drawdown on the aquifer, using private wells doesn't seem to address that issue. To my uneducated non-hydrologist thinking. And the other of registering people and all of that seems overly complicated to me. Again, I would respectfully submit that if it's within your power to just simply have a ban on watering residential lawns other than hand watering. It's one thing for people to stand over, a bed of daffodil bulbs for 5 minutes and water them once a week.
Yeah.
Rather than, I mean, how many times do you see automated systems running in the rain?
Let me give you a couple quick responses. First of all, on the latter part, our previous draft of the regulation did include essentially phasing out these systems and trying to require them to get off the system. I guess my feeling, given the comments we got and input, that we wanted to try to strike more of a balance. And I think what we're proposing now is an incentive for people to get off the system, both in terms of water rates, public education outreach, explaining options. As one of my clients says, don't let perfect get in the way of good. So we're trying to head in the right direction here. And ideally, I don't disagree with what you're suggesting, but I think there's enough people that have a history of using the system for an irrigation source that it's going to be pretty drastic change to essentially kick everybody off the system. On the private well issue, this is something we need to do some better education on, and perhaps I can ask Tom to help me going forward. But my sense is if you take the pumping off of one well where you have a big cone of depression and distribute it to a bunch of smaller wells throughout the whole town, the drawdown levels are going to be less, especially at focus points like the Little River, which is our focus on the wetlands. It's true that overall the water budget might be the same because you're taking the same amount of water out. But if you look at actual water levels and then flow to surface waters like the Little River, I think it's pretty clear that distributing that large pumping from our nearest big public well to, let's say, hundreds of private wells distributed is going to have much less of a drawdown effect on the stream. And Tom, maybe I'll just defer to you on that and see if you can help me on that, either agree or disagree, and maybe explain it better
Well,
if I haven't
that
done a
makes
good
sense to
job.
me. I appreciate that input. Thank you.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, you're right, Scott. Many little straws have less of an impact than one big giant one. And I also just wanted to part of my work in looking at this and in the recommendations is to hop on some of the work that the USGS is doing in measuring river flows, and particularly the Santuit River. And 30% of the pumping already comes from well 5, and the Santuit River is actually recognized in the in your Water Management Act permit as a special cold water fishery, for the sea-run brown trout and that. So there's actually something already in the permit that is highlighting or accentuating the potential impacts on Santuit. So, I'm just adding on to Chris's predicament of trying to meet demand by switching pumping around, is that there may not be that much to divert.
Thanks, Tom. Okay, well, we
Scott-
do have other
Scott?
items on the agenda. Mark, yes?
Yeah, I'd just like to comment. First of all, having an irrigation policy that prohibits new hookups is not radical. Mashpee does it. I think we ought to keep
right.
reminding people of that.
Right.
The other thing is that we just need to make it clear that the extreme pumping that we experience is at the very same time when we have seasonal drought. So they reinforce each other. People are pumping more because of the drought, and we're it's drawing it down farther because we're pumping more. So it's like a feedback loop, isn't it? The other final thing is that tongue in cheek a little bit, but we could have the irrigation users pay for a third water tower that we will fill in times of high water table. And they can suck that one dry during the summer. And they'll pay for it all.
Dan also has a comment. Go
Yeah.
ahead, Stan.
Well, a lot of the things
And
that I
Carol,
was thinking
yeah.
about
Go
have
ahead,
already
Stan.
been stated. I agree, but with the fact that if you take somebody off of their irrigation system and put them on their private well, the amount of water they're drawing will probably be about the same. True, it'll be scattered around the area differently, but I would rather you not make that assumption, that you have Tom go off and make some assumptions about, you have X number of wells, irrigation systems, you'll have X number of wells around the area. What is that really going to do to the water system? The level of the water system and the quality of the water system. I think the other thing you need to be careful of, and this kind of gets into a little bit of politics, but you need to be equitable. The people that can afford to pay $1 gazillion for water will pay it. How about the people that can't afford it and their lawns go brown? So, it may be an equity thing. That's all I have to say.
Oh, that's a really good point. Actually, we do have hardship policy on the agenda tonight, so we might get to a little bit of that, but I think that's a point well taken. Carol, I want to recognize you. You've been patient here.
Thank you, no problem. Two things. I cannot say, I have an irrigation system that I inherited when we bought this house, which Jen didn't know about, and I told her last spring, I guess. But
I disconnected it yesterday, Carol.
okay, good. The fact that she didn't know we had one from our water bills shows that you can use it responsibly. Okay. And that ties into, but I think you guys should go as full court, hard as you can on no new systems without a well, all the things you talked about. I totally support. From years ago, I also supported increasing the water prices even more than they are now. I mean, that didn't affect anybody at the top level. So you can also look at doing that to get the high-end users to pay more of their share. So I really fully support everything you're doing and don't hesitate to do more.
Thank you very
The other,
much.
yeah, the other thing was to say that on this coming Sunday at 1 o'clock, no, Saturday, the 24th at 1 o'clock, Hyannis Country Gardens is doing a free seminar by Dakey's, Jamie Dakey's, as well as CL Ferrardi on organic lawn and best practices for Cape Cod. So I don't know if they're going to record it or not, but it just letting you guys know that that's out there. And if I can, I'll be attending it, but it's now a free event and they do really good stuff. So
Thank
I don't
you.
know I don't know how we pass it on to our community, but it's
Well, we
out
can
there.
certainly post, I don't know how much traffic we get on the website. We can certainly post it there. And
I'll put
maybe we
it there in
should,
Facebook.
maybe we should keep building our public outreach on this issue so that when we do get people interested, we can direct them there, Jen. So why don't we just add that to the,
I mean, I have an organic Cape Cod lawn. I don't put any fertilizers in it. We barely use our irrigation system and it's fine. It's green when it's supposed to be green now, and it's brown when it's supposed to be brown in the fall, in August. So what?
thank you. All right, Chris, go ahead.
Yeah, just a couple quick things that on your internship, I did talk to you. I did not talk to the other two. I did get an email from one of my other superintendents who is on the Cape Cod Tech internship stuff, and he was asking if anybody would think about taking on any students. I don't know if this would be a situation, but it could be something that was posted into something like that if you guys so choose, just to let you know that option came up. It was just last week or late last week that he sent that out.
Well, that's a good point. And maybe I'll just ask the commissioners, it is third week in April. Are we ready to pull the trigger on maybe the intern? We got the budget regardless of the policy and the regulation. And should we advertise it? Tom, you probably know this. Is this the right time or can we wait till May to make this decision?
I don't know that we have the budget, right? We have to wait for the district meeting for that.
Yeah.
Oh, good point.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's proposed.
We were the post, correct.
And when is the
Oh.
district meeting again?
I believe it's the 25th of May, I think.
Okay.
And then
Yeah.
that budget money would be available beginning July 1st. So that would give us June to put somebody in place.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Thanks, Chris, for bringing
Yep.
that up.
And just the last thing on your irrigation regulations. I know we're going to talk about it a little more. I just only have concerns on the enforcement parts here with the guys going around. How to do that? I'd like a little more clarification if we do something like that. How we're going to be able to do that, and I would like to check with our. I believe that our bylaws say, as DEP says we can, on the amounts, because it used to just be you couldn't fine for taking of water or offenses for over $300, but it has changed to a certain percentage, I believe, or you can get back of what was out there. So I have to look about if there's a different for enforcement stuff.
We'll have to talk more about that, Chris. I don't have any
Yeah.
quick answers for you, but
No,
certainly.
I
Yeah,
just
and
wanted to throw it out there a little bit and
Yeah.
everything, just to say that those are my only concerns on those two.
Fair enough.
Chairman,
Yes,
I
Robinson.
think that, I think we're on a glide path to having this regulation adopted. I haven't heard anything, but I don't think tonight's the night. I think we want to make sure that people have a chance. And if we could perhaps schedule a vote on it next month, nail down some of these remaining questions, but
Sure.
the idea of just knowing how many there are, I think is important.
Yeah.
The information is is vital. And then being able to, to examine seasonal fluctuations in those accounts. That'll tell us really what we think we know, which is that irrigation is driving a lot of this extra demand and extra pumping in the summer. So I would suggest that we just sort of table this for now, have a more like a public hearing next time. And we have advertised agenda mailing recently that announced that this was going on.
Yes.
We've had good success with the Santuit Civic Association mailings. Maybe we can ask them to do another one for our May meeting.
What do you think about posting the draft regulation on the website?
Yeah. Yeah.
Tom?
And I also would suggest making sure that Attorney Boudreau has had a chance to look at it.
Good point. Okay, Jen, let's send it over to Boudreau. I'll work with you on that. That's a good suggestion. And we'll post it on the website and we'll put it on the agenda for next month. Perfect. Tom?
Just a question on your criteria regarding that they register with the district. If they're gonna register, could they also tell us how many acres?
Yeah, I didn't get into detailing what they would register yet, but we should talk about that. But certainly that would be something that would make sense, right? The irrigated area. Yep.
Okay.
Good point. So people, give some thought to that because we specify that in the regulation next month. That's a good thought. I'll write that down. Anybody else? All right, well, thank you. This is a lot of time, but this is a big deal, and hopefully we're gonna make a move on this next month. I think we've satisfied the concerns and questions about doing the study, and ready to move ahead. Looking at the agenda here, let's see what we got. We have the leak adjustment policy, hardship policy, and policy advisory committee update. Do we want to make it run at all of these? Oh, I'm sorry, water quality, 54 Roosevelt Road. Let's take that up first. Jen, do you want to brief us on that?
Yep, let me just share the screen on that one.
Yep.
So there is, we were contacted by a reporter from the Cape Cod Times who is doing a story, I believe, on the water quality concerns at this property. We worked with Commissioner Robinson to put together a statement that we will give. We've directed all comments to Mark Boudreau, the counsel for the district. We put together the documents that Ms. Hinkle requested regarding 54 Roosevelt and gave all of that information to Attorney Boudreau, who's been our contact point going forward with this. We did also provide him with this statement that was put together by one commissioner. So we want to be sure to share this and talk about this at our meeting with all of the commissioners so that we can give Mr. Boudreau the go ahead to share this with Ms. Hinkle.
I'll just briefly mention, I had 2 conversations with the reporter and a couple conversations with Attorney Boudreau. And I want to thank Commissioner Robinson for drafting this. I think this makes sense. It gives us an opportunity to set the story straight from our perspective. So any further questions on this before we get this out? Or comments?
I move that it be adopted, and it's not as press release. It's just something I think we should give to this reporter who's interested in the issue.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Very good. Let's move on. Excellent. Thank you again, Commissioner Robinson, for drafting that.
Has there been a lot of follow-up on that, Jen?
Nothing so far.
I did get the last call I had with the reporter was a thank you for providing the information. And so it seems like things have gone relatively well, but we'll see what happens.
Can we, Jen, can you email that to her tomorrow?
You want me to send it to Ms. Hinkle or do you want me to send it to Mark?
Well, Mark's seen it, hasn't he? Mark
He
Boudreaux?
has.
Yeah.
I didn't know if,
Yeah, he's agreed to it.
Oh, so I think it's fair to send it out to her, the reporter.
Right. I
And
agree.
I would get it to her as soon as possible. We don't know when she's
Yes.
writing something.
okay,
Yep.
I'll do it first thing.
Perfect. Okay, the next item is leak adjustment policy.
Give me 1 second. Send to Ms. Hinkle. Okay. So last month when we talked about this, you asked me to draft some additional language for the leak adjustment. And let me just pull that up. Oops, sorry, I gotta rotate. Okay, sorry, give me 1 second. Okay, here's the leak adjustment. So in response to our discussion from last month, when we talked about what it should and shouldn't apply to and how to calculate conditions based on an average or that it's not due to negligence, I drafted the language that I circulated earlier for you to review. So tonight we would just need to adopt the language as rewritten.
Yeah, and I think this goes to that anomaly that we were dealing with a couple of months ago, where, and I think it addresses it well, and I would move that it be adopted.
Second.
I'm just reading it. Sorry.
Okay, no problem. Take a minute.
And Tom, the
I'll
new,
second that.
okay.
I'm sorry, Tom.
I'll second that.
Okay, great. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Excellent. Thank you for drafting that, Jen. I think this does address the issue that we had at the last meeting, so that's a good step forward.
Yep.
I gotta get back to my agenda here. What's next on the agenda? I can't see it.
Next on the list is the hardship policy
Yes.
review.
Yeah.
So we had, again, at last meeting discussed some considerations for one of our residents who has requested a hardship adjustment. Mr. Robinson was going to be updating the draft with some of that, but in the meantime, we wanted to talk through how we could make this work for the resident that has requested an adjustment. We worked out, or I worked out a recommendation on how to A, adjust the bill, and B, set up a payment plan for him. He has, since our discussion has become current on what was past due, the $65.15 that was paid on April 5th. The $50 for the minimum use that is currently due will be due by the end of April, and he has agreed that that will be, he will be able to pay that. And then the remaining balance would be broken down into 4 equal biweekly payments of $48.04, as his position is seasonal and he will be going back to work in May. And he believes that this would be doable for him.
So I would just say, as the drafter of this policy, that what we wanted to do is to give ourselves the latitude and flexibility to provide a more specific way for people to work with us when they have demonstrated hardship based on some objective criteria. And then I think it's, almost a case by case consideration as to how we would apply with this policy when somebody is eligible for it. It's totally at our discretion, but I think that having gone through this past year with unforeseen circumstances for a lot of people, it makes sense to have this as a policy. I think what Jen has done here is to show how, in this particular instance, it's not just wiping it out, but it's showing how we are trying to, accommodate this person with a hardship, a financial hardship due to loss of job. So I think this is a great example of how it could work. And I don't think we need to use this particular formula with everybody, but I think if it works for him, then we should adopt the policy, and in this particular instance, apply the formula that Jen has come up with. So my motion is to adopt the policy that we've discussed at the last couple of meetings, and to recommend that we use this particular practice for this particular instance. That's my motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Any further discussion on this? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you again, Commissioner Robinson, for your work on this. And I agree with you that I've not been around as long as the other commissioners, but I've seen a great variety of cases here. So I think the flexibility is important. And I want to give a shout out to Jen for being a great interface with these people and accommodating them. I think we have happy customers, and that's the bottom line. So thank you all for your hard work. Policy Advisory Committee update, Tom?
The latest I saw was that the CIP was not going to require concurrence. It was going to require simple recommendation, whether it be positive or negative, which is what we always get from the Prudential Committee anyway. So I think it's fine. And I would move that we adopt that, or we don't adopt it. I would move that we
Support it.
Support that and send it on up to the Prudential Committee.
Okay. Is there a second on that?
Second.
All right. And Tom, how would that happen? Is this like an email from you to them or from me to them? Or how do we do that?
I don't know.
Okay. Just want to be clear on what the outcome is here. Is it something Jen can do, or?
I think it could just be in our minutes that we
Okay.
recommended it, we support it.
Okay.
To go on up.
Wonderful.
To the Prudential Committee.
All right.
Is that sufficient, do you think, Jen, Chris?
I do. I think Seth has already discussed it with Prudential, and I believe it's their intention to put it on the warrant for the annual district meeting.
Yep.
Okay. It's been motion made, seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Excellent. Thank you, Commissioner Hoppenstadt, for that update. Is there any new business to bring before the?
Yeah, well,
yes.
it's not new business, old business still, that this bylaw committee that I attended.
Okay.
And the only real change is a lot of it was housekeeping. The one that really affects us, I think, is the, if you can scroll down, Jen, there was talk about who is entitled to go into people's properties. Right now it says the water commissioners or their assistants may enter upon the premises. And we're suggesting that we change that to the assistant. Can you scroll down a little bit more? That the superintendent and the employees are the ones who can enter upon the premises. I don't want to go into people's homes and examine apparatuses. It wouldn't behoove either them or me to be doing it. So let's just take that one particular power out of the water commissioners.
I do think that language was copied into the irrigation policy, so we'll need to up that as
It
well.
was. I was just going to mention that we'd have to change that also.
Right. Well, we have to wait until the district votes it.
Right.
But is that okay with everybody?
Yep.
Unless Tom wants to go in people's houses. I don't know. Maybe he does.
I'm good with that.
Do we need a motion on this, or?
Oh, one pandemic and everybody doesn't want to go in a house.
Right.
I think, again, it's just to support the changes that are suggested by the bylaw committee.
Okay, very good. Well, I think we got through the agenda. Unless there's any other business to bring before the water commissioners, again, Carol, you're still here. Any other public comment? Okay.
Next meeting?
Next meeting date?
Sorry, I was looking at the chat, so I
Oh.
couldn't get to my unmute. I
Carol,
don't-
go ahead. Carol, go
I
ahead.
do not
Carol.
have any other,
Okay,
but thank you
Okay.
for asking very much.
certainly. We appreciate you being here. Okay, next meeting date, Jen, what would be the normal?
Question. And don't forget, mid-May, there'll be budget and candidates night. I don't know what the date is for that yet. And then.
Oh, I have that date. Hold on.
Oh, thanks, Carol.
It's 2 weeks. It was in the currents. I believe it is. Yes, it's Monday, May 17th.
Okay.
Commissioner-
Unless Jim had the wrong day, but that's what came out in the currents.
And
Is
our
commi-
meeting would typically be May 19th.
Okay, is Commissioner Robinson going to be holding a rally at Lowell Field on the 17th?
I heard he was buying rounds of the Kettle Ho.
Does he,
You're muted. I'm sure it's,
do we know if he has any opposition?
Mark, you're muted.
I haven't heard if there's opposition. I guess if we see a yard sign, we'll know.
Well, Jen, has anybody else pulled papers?
I'm not doing the nomination papers this year.
Oh, you're not? Where are
Nope.
they?
I don't know. And they're not posted on the website either.
Mark, where did you get your papers?
The clerk emailed me and told me to come get them at the fire station.
Okay, fire station. Okay.
Okay, so we're on for the 19th then, is that right, Jen?
That would be the third Wednesday. Yep.
Commissioner's okay with that?
Yeah, and then the district meeting is the was it the 30th or?
I think it is. I think voting is Tuesday, the 25th, and the district meeting would be the 26th.
So it's a busy month.
Hold on, I'm checking my calendar again.
Thanks. I will also tell you, I had a call from Jennifer Loughran, who is a district resident, but is also on the building expansion team for the Katuitt Federated Church. And she is going to be reaching out to Ms. Parks and will probably CC you, Scott, as well as Rick Pisano as the chair of the fire commissioners. They would like to do a presentation to the district leaders. They don't want to do it at annual district meeting. They're going to do a presentation on what the expansion will entail to, I think they have another one with the congregation on May 8th, I think they said, and then they're doing a meeting specifically with the abutters. And then with the district leaders, they would like to present to all three committees at one time so that everybody is, she said, forgive the phrase, but singing from the same hymnal as, you know, conversations are happening around the church expansion. So they just want to make everybody aware of what's going on there.
Thank you.
I do not have the dates, but I believe yours are correct because the following week is Memorial Day weekend. And then we're into June.
Right.
Okay, anything else to bring before the water commissioners? Hearing none, is there a motion to adjourn? And Mark is
So
still
moved.
on. And a second.
Second that.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Thank you and good night to everyone. Thank you for your hard work.
Nice
Thank you,
work,
guys.
everyone.
Have a good night.
Good meeting.
Good night, everyone.